but they won't let me.
So listen, do you remember Havannah syndrome, that mysterious thing where these diplomats and spies living in Cuba started saying some weird stuff, like that they were hearing bizarre sounds, they were feeling bizarre sensations, yet hearing, vision loss, memory, balance problems, they were nauseous, they were getting headaches. Well, today, we are now learning that one thing has been ruled out about what happened, at least according to a newly declassified review by U.S. intelligence agencies. They say that the so-called Havana syndrome was probably not originating from a foreign adversary, from somebody like Russia. And, okay, but that's not much relief for folks like Tina Hanifer, a former Foreign Services officer stationed in Havana, who told NBC News about the moment this all hit her, saying, in her words, I felt like I was being struck with something, pain that I've never felt before in my life, as if I'd been seized by some invisible hand and I couldn't move. Here she is last year. It's very easy for people to be defensive and say, but you look fine. But the reality is I'm not. And I don't think very many of us are. If we just want to have our lives back. NBC's Ken Delaney and everybody's notes. Again, this is not an altogether shocking conclusion from the intel agencies. You and the national security team have been reporting, I think, for a while now, but it was unlikely that these intel agencies would find, like Russia or China or somebody else, was trying to mess with our diplomats. That said, as we said, people like Tina want to know what the heck happened? Where did this come from?
I'm so glad you played that clip from our colleague Andrea Mitchell's package, because that shows there is real human misery behind this phenomenon. Some 1,500 people, we learned today, I learned in a 2-hour-long intelligence briefing, have come forward and said they've suffered some version of these symptoms, some worse than others, but some can't work. And this was one of the biggest investigations in the modern history of the intelligence community. They conducted for years, intensive look at as many of these things as they could get their arms around, and they found not only no evidence of foreign involvement, they found evidence refuting foreign involvement. Remember, the working hypothesis for a while was an energy weapon, potentially microwave energy. Russia was a likely suspect, but they worked really hard to confirm that hypothesis, and they ended up refuting it. And they're saying there is no one set of symptoms here. So they're really saying there isn't a Havana syndrome per se. There are a lot of disparate and different situations.
So this is like one of these things with the Bermuda Triangle, destined to forever be kind of a mystery.
Yeah, I think what they didn't want to say this fully, but there's a bit of a psychogenic factor here. When you ask a workforce, if you feel any odd symptoms, please come forward and tell us, because we think you might be under attack. You're going to get a lot of reports. And by the way, reports they say have trickled off recently because it's not in the news as much. So, but that doesn't explain that core group of people, particularly at the U.S. Embassy in Cuba. For some of them have documented brain injuries, and they can't really explain it. They've said environmental factors, pre-existing medical conditions. They even talk about, in some cases, HVAC malfunctioning can cause pressure in a room, which can lead people to think, but that doesn't cause brain injury. They really don't have good answers, except they can tell us what they think did not happen.
Ken Delaney, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Now let's watch a different video. They just call everybody crazy. Let's go have a look.
For the third time this month, a U.S. government official
I'm going to have to break this down part by part.
is experiencing symptoms of Havana syndrome. The Wall Street Journal reports that the CIA has recently evacuated an intelligence officer serving in Serbia after suffering serious injuries consistent with the
So the CIA must have been suffering from it, a CIA agent. So over 1,000 people. So we have in all these agencies that are quote-unquote mentally unstable. But go ahead.
mysterious disease. Havana syndrome got its namesake in 2016 after 26 diplomats and their families in Havana, Cuba, began experiencing dizziness, headache, fatigue, nausea, anxiety, memory loss, even brain damage. The cause is believed to be some sort of device emitting ultrasonic or microwave energy. Tracy Walder is a former CIA officer and FBI
Former CIA and FBI officer.
special agent. Tracy, is this something where people are being targeted?
Is this something where people are being targeted?
Is this some type of security issue?
Thank you for having me, Adrian. I absolutely think that this is a targeted attack, and I believe that this is not just a security issue, but I believe that this is a national security issue.
She absolutely believes it's targeted, and she thinks it's a national security issue.
We are seeing very targeted attacks towards people like Director Burns, people like Vice President Harris.
Hold the phone. So we're seeing very targeted attacks. You mean like Director Burns or Vice President Harris? I never heard anything about Vice President Harris getting attacked by a directed energy weapon, but go on.
And also, other CIA officers and State Department officials.
And other CIA officers and State Department officials.
To me, this is extremely concerning.
Extremely concerning.
I absolutely believe that this is a targeted attack.
She absolutely believes it's targeted.
You mentioned the vice president. What symptoms was she having, or what
Yeah, curious.
we know about her case?
So the vice president herself was not the target. It sounds
So the vice president herself was the target.
like people who were part of her security detail.
Okay, so it was part of her security detail. So still, and nobody heard about that? And I thought it was a directly targeted attack. If it was targeted, they missed her and ended up getting part of the security detail? I digress.
Were targets. They were suffering from things like dizziness, memory loss, nausea, extreme headaches. Those are the types of symptoms that seem pretty consistent across the board.
With like a hypersensitivity to maybe some kind of non-ionized radiation or microwave?
With Havannah syndrome.
Now, this seemed like a whole bunch of bunk to a lot of people, like a rumor or some type of, something you might hear in a spy movie.
Seems like a whole bunch of bunk, a rumor, something you might see in a spy movie.
But now we're hearing about these symptoms. There's been so much mystery surrounding.
Some mystery.
So I don't think people quite understand. For those
People don't quite understand. Okay, go ahead.
who are experiencing these symptoms, what is the remedy?
So that's a difficult question to answer because I think the problem is we don't necessarily understand.
They don't understand.
Exactly where Havannah syndrome is coming from. Some of the things I think we've discovered is that this is probably some kind of a radio frequency. I've heard one of the solutions to the problem is using satellites and
Radio frequency, satellites, okay.
that are tracking radio frequencies from the Earth.
Radio frequencies from the Earth.
And the problem with that is it's extremely broad.
Wait a minute, I thought it was very targeted. Now it's extremely broad.
I don't know how you could sort of target specific individuals to try to stop.
She doesn't know how you could target a specific individual, but the first question asked was, do you think this is a targeted attack? And she says, I absolutely believe it was a targeted attack.
These attacks. We do know that you do need line of sight for them.
Now you need line of sight. You have to have eyeballs on them. So now we went from satellite to frequency from the Earth to
Most part to conduct these attacks. So one of the things we could do is look at increasing security in our embassies, perhaps boarding up windows.
So we just put some plywood on the windows. That'll stop it. Kind of like I don't know, if we get nuclear bombed, just get some duct tape and tape the fucking doors, right?
Things like that. But I think for the time being, it's going to be very difficult to fight.
It's going to be very difficult to fight.
It's basically the brain is sort of a new battlefield, I guess.
Wait, who asked that? The brain is a new battlefield. Do you get it? Key in. You just watched a Mockingbird Volley. Click, click, click. She's ex-CIA, ex-FBI. She believes it's highly targeted, but it's broad. She lied and said, the vice president. Well, I really didn't mean her. I meant her. I think it's very broad. We know very little about it. It's coming from satellites. It's coming from the ground. It's coming from all over. But it's not the boogeyman. We have no idea. They're all crazy.
It's so fascinating and so sci-fi. The Biden administration has
Sci-fi and fascinating.
called this crisis a, quote, top priority. So I know that we'll be hearing more about this. I wish it wasn't called Havannah syndrome because that kind of makes it seem like you can catch it.
You can catch it. You mean like a cold or a virus?
Really like Havannah attack. But you don't want to make it about Cuba, so it's really, we need to change the name.
You don't want to make it about Cuba. We just named it Havannah syndrome. Just wanted to point something out.